Welcome to Market Makers, a podcast about the leaders, builders, and operators shaping the future of real estate, prop tech, and SaaS. Most of the real conversations in this industry aren't happening on stage. They're happening behind the scenes with the people actually building and running these businesses day to day. And right now, there's a narrative that consolidation is inevitable, that independence is fading, that scale wins. But what if that's wrong? In this episode, we're digging into why the best independent brokerages aren't just surviving, they're gaining market share, moving faster, and building businesses that are aligned with their agents and clients. We're joined by Jared Antin, Executive Director at Brown Harris Stevens, who's spent nearly 2 decades inside the brokerage world. From agent to operator to leader inside of one of the most respected independent firms in the country. This is a conversation about what's really happening beneath the headlines, where independents win, where they struggle, and what it takes to build a modern brokerage in today's market. Let's get into it. Welcome to Market Makers, a podcast about the leaders, builders, and operators shaping the future. I'm Chanté, Blough.
I'm Lauren Henss.
Between the two of us, we've spent the last couple decades working inside brokerages, prop tech companies, and marketing organizations across the industry. What we've learned is that the most interesting conversations about real estate rarely happen on stage. They happen behind the scenes with the people actually building and running these businesses.
Innovation is easy to talk about. Execution is brutally hard. And nobody knows that better than the people actually building inside the indie brokerage model right now. And let's jump into it. What this topic is going to be about is everybody talked about how consolidation would kill independence, right? And they were wrong. While the independents have been busy merging, the best indies aren't just surviving, they're thriving and they're taking market share. So today we're really diving into this topic that is near and dear to our heart, the role of independence right now, where the industry is seeing massive consolidation, new technology, a lot of questions about what the future really holds.
I would say there are a few people better positioned to talk about that than our guest today, Jared Antin. Jared, before we dive into the big industry questions, we'd love to start with a little context. So tell us a little bit about your background, how you ended up at Brown Harris Stevens, and what your role there looks like today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I'm Jared Antin. I've spent nearly now 2 decades in and around the brokerage industry. Got my real estate license at the ripe old age of 19 and never looked back. I worked as an agent for a number of years. I then got into management and leadership, training and development. I ran a previous independent brokerage firm and spent 15 years there. That firm had gotten sold earlier this year to another larger independent. And I made the decision to make a move to my current firm, Brown Harris Stevens, halfway through 2025. Brown Harris Stevens is a incredibly well-respected luxury independent brokerage firm. We go back over 150 years. And in my role as executive director, I wear a few different hats. One is I work out of our flagship office on Park Avenue in New York City, managing the over 400 agents that we have here. But I'm also heavily involved in agent strategy, brokerage operations, technology, really elevating the agent experience and really making sure that we can also translate complex market forces into really simple, actionable information for our agents and for our clients to make better, more informed decisions.
I love that. So let's talk about this a little bit deeper. So we're talking about, the conversation of independent brokerages now and how they fit into the landscape. And I think, Jared, you and I say to have so many questions about this. But like from your perspective right now, and we'll go back and forth, how does BHS, where do independents actually stay right now? And why does this moment feel different from like a few years ago?
Well, I
Right.
think this hat from our friend Jeff Kennedy that Lauren and Chanté and I got from being in a conference the other week
Yeah,
in
we
Vegas
did.
did all.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I have spent the entirety of my career working at an independent brokerage. And the easiest way that I can sum up what it means, and I say this to any agent that I'm speaking to, whether they're here, I'm interviewing them, and I say this to clients anytime I'm asked, is that what it means to work for an independent brokerage is very simple. That anytime I need to make a decision, there's one North Star that I'm looking at. And it's very simply what is best for the agent or for the client. That's it. we're not trying to optimize earning per share. I'm not trying to juice the share price. I'm not trying to manipulate some sort of, public financial statement for someone else's gain. It's very simple. It's what is best for the people whom we are fiduciary for. That's it. And the amazing thing, if you ask, what has changed in this now new era of consolidation, I think it's now making the independent brokerage firms that much more relevant and that much more unique. So they can continue consolidating all they want because that's just increasing the way that we're perceived and received in the markets where we're in.
I think you brought up a really good point, because a key part of this is like exactly what you said. There's one person that you have to talk to. And I think the other key is agility,
Yeah,
right? Out all of this, where we can make decisions. If we want to sit here and lead a digital transformation, we can do that in a minute. If an agent needs a campaign, we can do that in a minute. So everything, every decision that we make is for the agent, for their growth, to help them close more deals in less time.
exactly.
And it's truly authentic what we're doing, right? And I think that's very, very different versus right now. What we see, okay, we're boutique and we're big box. Nothing wrong with that. But what I see is it's very, very hard to have access to executive leadership like we both do or can in that format, right? From a leadership and being able to grow your business.
Right now, it emotionally feels like something is happening. What is happening right now in the history in the landscape is very easy for media to also make it a really big deal. But when you look at the pure numbers of it, the reality is that the independents still very much own a large market share and the impact within real estate. So what has been the differentiator for independents actually has not changed and will not change, even with the things happening in the landscape as they're happening right now. The reality is, to what you both said, to echo that, you can really stay true to what your value system is when you are actually focusing on the client and the agent. And having been a CMO at an independent brokerage, you know that the agent actually is the first customer that you're thinking about. And then the client, if the customer experience and the agent experience is great, then the client experience is going to follow. And that's going to be as equally great. And the agility piece of it, when there is an idea, I think a lot of like the charm of what these bigger brands used to have and what they used to sell in order to get these top producers to come over is not true anymore. They will say that it's true, but it's not true anymore. You can't truly scale something in a way that doesn't completely make everyone run around like they're chickens with their heads cut off. And then let's not forget about proximity, right? Like, you are actually in that market. Jared, you live in the market that you are serving. So you're feeling the things that are impacting the agents. Probably before an agent even has to say anything to you, you're already thinking of ways to solve for that. And I think that's really important, especially for agents when they're making the decision of like, where do I go? I would say you really need to understand like what's super important to you.
I will say something though, which is like, and you both hit the nail on the head, but I will say something with independents who are going to thrive, not just survive. And we've all been through this and we've all done this really well, is you have to move from a legacy brand, which is history, right? To a modern brand, right? So a legacy brand, when you're looking at it, like where it's kind of like, it's still encapsulating the history of being over like 150 years, right? But it used to be where it was kind of like, we've been around for 150 years. Great, right? But what does that mean to the agent, right? So it's going from a legacy brand, which means you're known, which everybody knows you, but then going to a modern brand where you're relatable and understood.
Yes.
And that's where we're moving. That's where we've moved to. And the ones that just go back and tell that legacy where we've been around here, nobody cares, right? They care is, how is it relevant to me? Do I resonate with your values? Do you make me better? And I think the ones that are really thriving, like us and you and everybody else, have elevated that to not only the current agent base, right? But
Hmm.
also the agents that we want to attract and those personas. Yeah.
Correct. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think the legacy is important because it gives you the foundation of your reputation, right? But your past reputation, you have to continue building your future reputation. So a large part of the reason that I'm at Brown Harris Stevenson and in this role is to help usher in that next generation, to be able to make sure and to partner, with Matt Leon, our amazing CMO here, and the rest of, our leadership team and best is to make sure that we're continuing bringing on new technology that's going to add value, that's going to be able to help make your agents more informed. We just launched a new enterprise partnership with a local market intelligence platform that's really next generation and cutting edge because we want to make sure that our agents have the tools, the resources, and the know-how so that they can be more informed, more efficient, and therefore, be able to spend more time and be more available with their clients. So it's about being able to meet our agents where they are. And sure, some are not going to want to adopt the latest and greatest technology, and that's okay. We still have the human touch and we're still able to support them. And they have a deep, repertoire and a deep, Rolodex of their clients. And then for the other agents that do want to continue to iterate and innovate, then we're going to meet them where they are and we're going to make sure that they have all those tools and resources to be able to do that.
I love that. I love that. So, Jared, let's talk about this healthcare analogy that we were
Yeah.
talking about. So, I'm going to let you start, and Chanté and I are going to chime in, but let's start this comparison in terms of
Yeah.
deeper, everything like that when we're talking about acquisition.
So my wife's in healthcare, right? And obviously I'm in brokerage. So there's sort of this natural parallel. And we talk about this quite often. So if you look at it, there's been this aggregation, this, roll up, this consolidation within the healthcare, right? Used to, when I was growing up, the pediatrician was locally owned. It was a guy that built a business and built a practice. And the way that you would eventually sell that business back then was selling it to a new younger doctor that was just starting out that wanted to buy your caseload, right? And the value in what you were building was the patient, right? And what has happened is you've had these private equities, companies or institutional investors come in and basically just buying out these doctors. They're paying them for the patients for the caseload, then putting the doctors on a salary and, they become staff. And we've seen these big roll ups. And then as this has started happening, we've seen other companies buy smaller companies. So I look at my kids' pediatrician, it went from an individual to another conglomerate to now a larger conglomerate. And what has happened each time is the service has gone downhill, not from the actual doctor. The doctor's still great, but I can't just call the doctor, right? You got to
No.
go to this portal and put in a question or go to this help center. So I think it's still amazing that my own personal, general practitioner or primary care is an individual. I can get him on the phone. He's a great guy. He's not, part of one of these large systems. So you look at what has happened with healthcare. You've had this whole thing where it's rolled up and you talk to many of these doctors and they're like, I wouldn't have done it again. Or like, sure, I took the payday and that's great. But like, now I'm not my own boss. I got to hit all these other and try to hit all these metrics and things like that. And my wife works for a company like this too. Like there's metrics that are in place that make sense if you are, a investment banker trying to maximize returns on a spreadsheet, right? Back to my other North Star. But if I'm trying to say what's best for my clinicians or best for my, patients, then it's a different North Star. So that's just an easy way to look at the distinction at what's happening in the brokerage world. There are local mom and pop independence teams who are taking that check, who are selling out. And okay, that's fine. But understand that then from a client experience, from an end user perspective, right? I can clearly say there's a different experience between when I need to go through my kid's pediatrician or when I need to go to my own primary care that's in independence. So,
I mean, being fiercely independent is a gift. And I
mhm,
think it really gives, when we look at it, I look at the life cycle of the agent and what are all those moments that are here from onboarding, from recruitment, all the way to onboarding, all the way to exit and selling their business as obviously a sellable asset, right? What does that look like? And I think that that is an advantage in terms of, even if sometimes you do, not all, but if you do stay with a larger brokerage, you are the so-called ownership model may be there, but you are put into this box of this framework. You're going to hit a glass ceiling. You are going to. It's not like you can pave your own unique path of growth here. You're going to hit a glass ceiling. And I think it's just also access to the people that you want to be around to make you better. People, like, we've always talked about this, where you're like the composition of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, right?
mhm.
You always want to surround yourself with the 5 best people. So sometimes some have that executive leadership access, some don't. Some have that true business planning. Some do, some don't. But if they do, it's kind of like, okay, here's the same business plan that I gave everybody else. It's not tailored to what your specific growth goals are. And I think that is just such a win for
So,
everybody.
Lauren, you said fiercely independent. I'm going to add an and. So I'm going to say it's fiercely and unapologetically
Yeah.
independent,
Yeah.
meaning
Yeah.
that it's not a weakness, it's a strength, and it's a conscious decision to remain independent because it means that I can do what's right, by the people that matter most to me. So 100% agree.
Well, it's also the point of what we both share in common and always have is we attract the few, we repel the many.
Hmm.
We attract with people who resonate with our values, our growth goals, our overall vision of what the company is. And then the other ones that just want to be, like I like to say, like renters, right? Brand renters and hang their thing at the brokerage. I don't want those. I want people who want to innovate and make a difference. So just my, just
Yeah.
my,
One of the large brands in particular, when they were growing and scaling, I think that was a story that they were trying to tell. And I think they were just very loud in telling it is that come help us build this thing where you're going to have like minded people. The reality is they've hit an inflection point where that is literally impossible to do. And that's not from like an ego perspective. It's more of you quite literally cannot do that. It's physically impossible. So right now is a prime opportunity for independents to really capitalize on the fact and like really be clear on what their brand story is and what their value system is because then to your point Lauren like they will be able to attract the right people. But I think a lot of brokerages sometimes this is true of both sides of the coin, but I think that it is one of those things where like if you're not clear about who you are and what you stand for, then you're not giving yourself the opportunity to very easily attract the few, repel the many, which like attracting the few, repel the many. I think if, I had brought that to my CEO that when I was a CMO, she would have been like, what are you talking about? Like, we are a business. Like, we do have to like pay bills. But I think it's really being clear on like, who are we trying to attract? Are we trying to cultivate a culture where there's mentorship, there's collaboration. Yes, in theory, you're all competing against one another, but it's also rising tide lifts all ships. Like how, like what tide do you want to be a part of, essentially?
So let's hold on that. So we're independent, but we're not for profit. So we
right.
still are a business and we
Yeah.
still want to make money. The difference is I would argue the way that corporate America, the way that the publicly traded firms have gone is trying to squeeze every dollar of profit at the expense of almost everything else. Right. So you look at what has happened with some of these publicly traded firms and they're sacrificing or they're limiting the amount of support. They're moving more to an AI or a tech piece, and they're reducing that human layer of support, right? So at the independents, or at least at the firms that we represent, look, we still want to make money, but we're not going to do it at the sacrifice of providing the right service for our agents, of doing the right thing. So we're able to approach it in a different way then okay, how do we make sure we're taking care of our people? How do we make sure that we're running a viable, healthy, growing business? But we're not putting profit above everything else, inexcusably so, and basically, creating a situation that doesn't then reward the people who are helping you build it.
I agree. And I think that specifically, like, or tactically, what independent brokerages should be looking at right now, I think the first thing that you go to is like, okay, how much is overhead costing us, right? Like, as a business, you really do need to be looking at your P&L and understanding what are all the costs that are coming in. I think it is very easy to say, okay, like who are we cutting? But I think the smarter move is for independent brokerages to really look at their internal processes. And because a lot of these companies started off as, some of them were agents who were like, I don't want to play this game anymore. I want to go and do my own thing because I know how this should run. I know how this should feel as an agent. I know what kind of amazing client experience this should be. I'm going to go start it on my own. But the reality is those people weren't managing P&Ls before that. So now what you have is some businesses who are like really gaining momentum. They know their value system. They're doing so many things really well, but they're hemorrhaging because they keep throwing money at the problem that, and instead of looking at, okay, like truly, what should we be doing from a systems perspective? What should that workflow look like? And that's on every facet of the business. And so what I would say, if I were an independent right now, number one, I'd be taking advantage of this moment in history, um, and making sure that when I'm telling the story of the values that my brokerage has, I can really actually implement.
Hmm.
But then also, in order to actually implement and provide that human level support, you have to look at what your internal systems are doing and how they're working. And do you have three things that all kind of do the same thing? Like really being honest with yourself about that and being ready to actually move into a new era of the business.
You're so right now. I can't even. I mean, when you're doing, if you're going to go up against the 800-pound gorilla, right, as an independent, do you have those systems, people, process to scale it and to make it a seamless experience? Because especially when like, and Jared, let's talk about this from a recruitment standpoint, because I know your guys' funnel's up, so is ours with expansion. But you have to be able to have those because they're normally coming from that. And then they expect at least that, if not better, when you're coming from that.
Yeah.
But like Jared, also like let's talk about like, the inbound momentum you guys have had.
Yeah.
Because we've had a lot, and I know you've had a lot. So let's talk about that a little bit deeper of what you're seeing.
Yeah. So recruiting is interesting. I have spent a lot of time over my career making outbound dials, reaching out, building relationships, planting a lot of seeds and things like that. What's interesting is, here at Brown Harris, we don't really have a recruiting division, right? We don't have a recruiter. We're not programmatically going out there and making calls. So what's interesting is seeing the amount of inbound traffic that comes
Wow.
in, part because of our reputation, because of how entrenched we are in our core markets. So in some of our expanding markets like Miami, for instance, we're a bit more aggressive on the recruiting side, but in our, mainstay, New York City, the Hamptons, things like that, we're not really making a ton of programmatic outbound dials. And when we do, we're doing it for a reason. The agent was favorably reviewed by, one of our agents on a deal. We've worked with them in the past. They did something, amazing and we want to congratulate them. But generally speaking, we're getting inbound interest where people are saying a few things. One is like, hey, I'm actively considering a move, right? I'm talking to these firms. And obviously, I know BHS, I hold you guys in high regards. I haven't heard from you. Like, I want to speak to you. I want to put you in consideration. So it's almost like devoid of us calling, they are aware of who we are. We're a sizable presence. And they're like, hey, before I make a move, I want to talk to you. So that's great. And then there's people that are coming back, from my past that I've, worked with or spoken to. I just had one earlier this week. I think the last time I talked to the guy was 3 years ago. He's like, hey, I'm now looking for a move. I remember you made the move to BHS, hold them in high regards, like really love to catch up. So we're seeing that sort of happen. And then, I'm nurturing people that I know in the business, we're keeping them up to date every quarter on some things that are happening here. But I'm generally finding that people are receptive to a call, even though we're coming into our busiest time of year in the New York City market, even though our market is definitely picking up. People are definitely more receptive, I'm feeling now, to speak. And I'm also hearing people that have been at some of these more legacy firms that have now gotten part of the big elephant who are like, look, if I was going to go there, I would have went there 5 years ago and taken a check kind of thing. So like, let me re-examine and re-index where I want to be.
Right.
So yeah, it's really interesting to see if you have a good product or you work with a good brokerage firm and you have a really good reputation, people are going to seek it out. And that's something that's been really unique, and really sort of encouraging and uplifting for me to be able to experience over the last couple of months.
I love it. And that is so true, especially, dividing your niche among all these other independents, right? And you guys have clearly done that. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. I love that.
And I think, on that same vein, you have to be able to know what are you offering, right? So you had Sean on, a previous episode, and Sean's a good friend of all of ours. And, Sean has talked about that as a brokerage firm, right? You're going to compete on price, the commission split, and you're going to compete on service. There's been no company that's been able to do both, offer really high commission splits and high service because the company's going to go bankrupt doing it. So pick your lane, kind of speak. If you're doing neither, you're not going to stay in business either. So those are sort of the two vehicles in which you can go. And we all know the companies that are competing, on high splits, and there's, independents, I think, have a better way to be able to compete on that high service, that high local expertise, the domain knowledge and things like that to be able to offer those brokers, a lot more. Because what I always like to say is 100% of nothing is still nothing,
Nothing.
right? So, if you're able to grow your actual business, and even if you're accepting something less than 100% for it, you still are going to be better off. But a lot of times agents are not always adept at being able to look at the full picture and calculating, what their ultimate take home earnings may be.
Well, I'll be specific to Brown Hair Stevens. Do you actually sit with the agents and walk them through that?
In terms of like how our commission structure, things like that.
Well, like breaking it down for them of here's what this could look like and helping them think through, okay, what are you expecting? Because Brown Hair Stevens to me feels like a brand where it is high level of service. That's just the level of sophistication and value system that even from afar,
Yeah.
that's what I just assume. So when you're working with these agents who are maybe getting offers of these like massive splits, how are you able to like help them and educate them and help them think through, okay, what do I actually want for my career and my business as a real estate agent?
It's a great question. So we approach these from a coaching and development perspective, right? So I want to understand because I'm as much interviewing the agent to know if they're going to be a good fit as much as the agent is interviewing the brokerage. And I think that's mistake number one with a lot of recruiting is it's a one-way interview. It's the agent interviewing the brokerage, not the brokerage and the agent, right? There are people that, if we hired would be a huge time suck or a negative addition to the culture. And that's more expensive than any potential revenue they may bring. So I like to sit down with with the agent and understand, okay, like, what are your goals? Why are you considering moving? What has changed? What's your longevity in this business? And, if they're in a growth mindset, right, then they would understand the fact that, look, by partnering with a company like BHS, it's going to give you more horsepower to be able to grow your business, right? We're going to be able to model out, what a 1, 3, 5, 7 year sort of growth pattern is going to look like. If someone is, either in a fixed mindset where they're just focused on the deal, right? They're in a transactional, not a sales oriented mindset, or, they're over that hump and they're on their way out, then maybe this isn't the right setup. Maybe they want to just go to the firm that's going to give them the most amount of money so they can, close out the remaining of their business. So I think it really depends. Again, where's the agent? Can we offer them the holistic support, whether it's across what we're doing on marketing or business development, or the fact that, we're the only brokerage firm in New York City now that also manages buildings, right? And in a market like ours, that's huge. That's akin to if a brokerage firm was running the HOAs for a bunch of subdivisions or things like that. That's my analogy for anyone not familiar with our vertical living here. And so that's a huge advantage because we're able to do these broker specialist programs and things like that. So what is the brokerage going to give you? And is that what is necessary for that agent to get to the next level? And that's the way we start all of our recruiting conversations. Like, all right, let's first understand, are we the right match? Are we the right business development partner for you? Because that I think is where most brokerage firms miss is that they don't think that they're actually that business development partner for the agent to help them grow and to help invest. And it's a partnership for us.
It is. Now that we've talked about this, let's talk about things and all the wins that we've talked about. We also talk about like the misses and the losses and what we've learned from them. So, what would you say that's one thing in the past year that you thought, hey, this is the greatest idea? We're going to try this. We're either going to launch this initiative. It could be recruitment. It could be a campaign. It could be whatever. And then you got into it and you're like, oh, this didn't work the way I thought it would. And what did you learn from it? Because
So
we've all had many. I think we have quite a bit every year.
So I'll answer this in the general that I think becomes relevant that everyone could take away. Anytime you launch something new, whether it's a new tech product, whether it's a new initiation, a new association, anything, what you need to be able to make sure that you're doing, because I've made this mistake where I haven't, is the people who are supposed to be using it need to experience it and need to believe it, right? Just telling people that, hey, we have this new thing, you're not going to get the necessary adoption. And a lot of times trying to roll something out en masse is counterproductive because it's going to take too much time or effort to even get it off the ground before you know if it has any lift. So learning from trying to launch some stuff and trying to get from 0 to 100 too quickly in not having people experience it, or thinking because I was the one that may have been, directly involved with launching. I've been living it for 3, 4, 6 months before we launch it. Like, of course I get it. Like, how do you not get it? I gave you a 10-minute presentation kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But the lesson, right, is that when you launch something, it's going to be better to launch something quicker with less of a lift by trying to do a beta group, right? Because you need people within your brokerage, boots on the ground, the agents that will be using it to be able to become raving fans, right?
Mhm.
And you need them to experience what that product, what that association, what that initiative gives them so that they can feel it and they can then communicate or turn it around. So we are in as much as anything else, this is experience economy. So, launching a new affiliation, great. How do we throw an event? How do we go and do something that gets them in the room and feels the excitement? How do we get some of the other clients and customers? How do we create, these sort of communications or shared experiences? So for me, the biggest lesson is that as you're looking to do anything new, try to incubate it in a small group of forward thinking people whom their business may resonate with what you're trying to roll out, and do it in a way that allows you to test quickly, cut quickly if it doesn't work, but make sure that the people that are going to be using this or part of this really understand, feel, can internalize what this is going to do for them and their business. And if it's not, then fine, move on to something else. So you got to fail to try, you got to try to fail, and that's okay. But you just need to be conscious of time, effort, and resources along the way to get you there.
Love that. I think so. My life now is consulting brokerages on different things, rollouts of lots of different kinds, right? Whether it's marketing, affiliations, new internal systems. And I think what I'm seeing is that they don't take advantage of this beta group that they are already incubating. And oftentimes brokerages will focus on the top producers only because they fear we piss them off, they're out,
Mhm.
right? But I think there's this other subset of people where if your sales managers really have their ear to the ground, they understand who the influencers are. Oftentimes, the people who are the most vocal because they're not spending their time supporting clients. And so those are not the top producers. So figuring out who are those influencers, helping make sure that they feel brought along, they can try things out. Those are going to be the first people who are going to complain anyway. You might as well fix it before they figure it out and complain in front of the entire office of agents. So I 100% agree. I think it's not being really strategic on how you're testing this out. I think the other piece of it too, which you touched on, is not being clear on what success looks like. So
Yes.
you can figure out as fast as humanly possible, like, okay, when will we know if this is failing? I think so often I see that it takes so many cooks in the kitchen to figure out whether or not something is working or it's not working. And then by then you've already shown your cards to everybody. All this is egg on your face and it probably didn't need to be. And I think that's why some independent brokerages are so hesitant to like move fast and learn fast because they're worried about looking stupid in front of their agents or making the wrong move. And I
Mhm.
think that's actually the wrong way to think about it. I think having that growth mindset of like, we're going to try it, we're going to figure it out. This is an experiment, making it safe for everyone to know this is not a forever thing. Let's try. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. And if you don't have that type of culture, if the expectation is perfection, you're not going to ever be able to move fast enough in the way that you need to be moving right now. Like right now is not the time to be the snail. Like you've got to
Yeah.
move fast and like you're going to fail. That's okay. But if you knew that you were going to succeed after the 31st time of trying, how fast would you fail 30 times?
Yeah.
I
The
think it's
world
like,
is spinning a lot faster now.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's running everything MVP, right? Minimum viable product. It's running it MVP. But one thing that I will add with that is you have advocacy, which is key. You have to develop advocacy groups, beta groups, all that. You also need to understand how they communicate. Because if you have different levels of agents, I was sitting here, I'm like, great, we're going to do an email campaign or we're going to do that. A lot of them don't read their email, right?
Right.
So like, okay, we're going to be doing text, we're going to be doing in person, we're going to be doing X, Y, and Z. So you have to understand there's multiple different touch points to get to them, right? Because I had that where I'm like, great, we did this wonderful campaign. And they're like, I never saw it. I mean, we all know this. It always comes back
Yeah.
if we never saw it. I'm like, oh, that's why we have to do it 5 different ways and understand
Mhm.
who is our ideal audience. And like you both said, there are going to be some that it doesn't matter if you write it in the sky, they're not going to adopt it. They don't want to. But for our main audience, understanding what that is, right? Yeah.
And trying to do too many things at once. I'm like saying nothing mind blowing right now. This is very
No.
obvious. But the reality is, like they only have so much time to spend on literally anything, right? Because they already have that laundry list of 100 things that they have to get to. And so saying it more than once and making it really easy for them to understand what's the 5-second explanation and being clear on the outcome that you're trying to get to, right? Like, are we rolling this out because it's going to give you more time? Because it's going to give you more deals? Are we rolling this out because it's going to help with your credibility? What is it? So they can decide very quickly whether or not they're going to pay attention. And if people don't pay attention, that means you probably picked the wrong thing to do because they don't care.
Well, that's it. Like we've moved, I think, as a society, beyond tech for tech's sake, right? For a while, the general thought process was like, all right, tech is gonna save us all, be the end all be all. But we're coming to this full circle moment, and AI has certainly increased the pace of this, but tech is not going to save us, number one. Number two, tech is not going to replace everything. What tech is going to be able to do is help us be more human, give us time back to be more present, with other people. So as AI becomes ubiquitous, having it or what you do with it isn't necessarily going to be the differentiator. What is going to be what you do with that time you get back and the soft skills, the people skills, who those interpersonal relationships are still going to matter more than ever before because technology now is going to give us all more time to spend with the people, right? There was an agent of ours that said the other day something memorable. I sell real estate. I don't learn technology, meaning that like I come to this company because you're a great company to help me transact real estate. Like I'm not here just to learn tech day in and day out. So to your point, technology needs to solve a pain point, create value, and be meaningfully above and beyond how an agent is currently doing it, whether that's another tech or an analog sort of setup. Because by making that investment in understanding the system, they need to get significantly greater incremental return so that it helps them, again, do better, sell more, be more available to their clients. So that's part of it that I think we need to get regrounded in that the soft skills and the interpersonal, they're not going away. They're actually to be more important as AI and tech becomes more ubiquitous.
I think this time last year, there was this fear of AI is going to replace everything and everyone. I've sensed a shift. I'm curious what both of you think, though. Like, is that no longer the fear? And people kind of understand, okay, it's going to allow me to move faster. Like, what's the new fear? I guess is what I'm trying to figure out.
think I think the people who are fearing it are the people that don't understand it. I think that's the number one thing that we're talking about because my goal with AI is to allow them to close more deals in less time so they can position themselves as a strategic advisor to their client. Because as we all both said, it is the personal thing and the level of service and how they relate to their clients and anticipate needs and how they become a trusted advisor is going to be the ones that the agents that thrive in
Mhm.
this new economy with AI, right? Those are going to be the ones. So the ones who are dealing with a business executive and have already read the press release of that CEO and understand what his investment philosophy is and understand, hey, by the way, I have this taste in wine. I like these business deals. They know those clients inside and out and are seen as a true advisor of part of their inner circle. That's what I think the difference is. The ones that just drive around and say, hey, yeah, I'm going to show you some houses. Great. The transaction's done. There's no nurturing of the sphere of influence. There's no really learning their world. and
Right.
what's important to them and what is not, those are the ones that are just going to become a commodity at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, I think fundamentally, this business, we're in this flight to quality, right? So, more business is going to be handled by a smaller portion of agents or teams out there. People will be doing more business. A smaller portion of the agents will be doing more business. So, they need to use these tools and resources to make them more efficient. So, to me, I think AI is really going to be this delegate and elevate. It's going to take, off sort of the lowest priority tasks, and it's going to free up that capacity to be able to go and work on higher level thinking or just be able to handle more clients if it takes you less time per client, not reducing the amount of in-person or human interaction, but reducing a lot of the back office or behind the scenes work so that, that's just, again, how a resource allocation question. And it's going to create a whole new slew of jobs to be able to now check, okay, so if you were coding, you're not writing the code, but how are you checking to make sure that the code works, if there's no bugs or errors and things like that? So, we're going to adapt as a society, and those that are resistant to adapting are going to be left behind or have a harder time catching up. And those that understand how to iterate and move forward, as long as you're not going too far out that plank, stay grounded to still the reality of where we are. But you need to be at the forefront and be able to test what new things are coming to make sure that you and your company and everything is set up, to be able to succeed as best as possible.
I think the other interesting thing that I've been seeing is I think it is becoming very, very clear who the people are who have this innate curiosity
Yeah.
and who doesn't.
Yeah.
And some people are just like, I'm on my way out. I don't need to be curious, and this is not going to be my problem.
Ted Lasso. Be curious.
Right, but like still, exactly. I think that I will be the 95-year-old who's trying to like figure out the new thing. I recently just went down a whole rabbit hole on Notion, and like all of the things that you can build within Notion. I'm driving Lauren crazy with things like that, but
No, I mean, you know this. I mean, I'm in AI classes all the time too. Like
yeah, so
I'm
it's
an AI
it's
nerd, so it's
yeah.
fine.
It's like constant. It's not about the like whether or not you use ChatGPT anymore. It's like, are you curious about the next thing that's coming out? And not being afraid to kind of not know the answer. But as an agent, it just gives you so many more tools than you used to have. And why not take advantage of that? Why not like try it out? I was helping my 8-year-old with a research project on ocean pollution, and I was trying to explain to her that we used to go to the library
The horror.
and the horror.
Had to walk uphill both ways with no
Oh,
shoes to
Both
the
most of that.
library.
ways, we had to look at, the encyclopedia, and most of the time it didn't even have the information. Then you had to like go look it through this drawer of all these index cards. Okay, what book is going to be most relevant? Like she looked at me like I was completely crazy. And what an amazing time to like grow up in this era where you can literally decide what do you want to be amazing at, and you have all of the tools. There's such a low barrier to entry now to so many different things that you get to educate yourself on and obsess about and like figure all of these things out. And if it's a real estate agent who's like truly passionate about what they're doing, this is an amazing opportunity for you that even a few years ago people didn't have when they were entering the industry. So I think it's really exciting and something that I'm hoping that more and more people will be.
Yeah, and I think, my key takeaway from that, and I think it ties back to this whole independent piece is be true to yourself, right? Authentically you. There's been too much of this sort of just like homogeneousness, which removes the fact that this business is hyper personal. It's where someone lives and it's incredibly, interdependent. So be unique and build your brand and build your business and stay true to your principles, but be unique.
Yeah. All right, Lauren, I think it's time for our fun question.
This is a fun question. So we
Wait,
all
these questions weren't fun?
no,
Sorry, our non-industry
This was the
related
boring
fun question. Yeah, these were all
related
fun
that we
real estate
throw at
questions.
everybody like at the end because nobody's going to
All
expect
right, bring it on.
for a
The
mind.
lightning round.
Yeah, the
Okay,
lightning
so here we
round.
go. You ready? If you had, and I'm interested to see what you say on this. If you had a full year off, did not
Yeah.
have to work, how would you spend that year?
Huh. golf, travel, spend more time with my kids. So I think in my 20 years in the business, I've only had 2 weeks off. A year could be nice at some point in time.
Lauren, what would you do
I would go to the Great Pyramids because I've always wanted
for
to do
an
that.
entire year?
No, I'm dividing this. Thank you.
So that's like the first 3 months.
Yeah, that's the first quarter, right? Like I would take my kids and like do a whole like museum tour, like educational
Amazing.
thing for like 3 months.
Nice.
Okay. I would do that. I would go to Tuscany for the other time
Because you need to detox and drink the wine
because
after.
I need to detox, take some wine, and maybe learn how to cook because Chanté knows that I do not know how to cook at all. And that is something that I really need to get better at. I would spend the other part of it, another quarter of it, I would spend in Austin, Texas, because it's one of my favorite cities in the world. Great music, great food, good people. And then the last part of it, I would spend on, there's a beautiful, I love how I have this planned out, but there's a beautiful lake in Paso Robles north called Lake Nacimiento that I grew up water skiing at my entire life, like every weekend. And we have a place up there. So I would literally spend those 3 months just water skiing, wine tasting, enjoying time with my family. And yeah, so I'd basically portion it out by quarter. But yeah.
Rock
All
on.
right, Chanté, good to go. Mine was pretty darn detailed, but yeah.
Okay, so my kids are at a really fun stage right now. I have an 8-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old.
I
So
got the 8 and 4, so I'll stop
uh,
there.
yeah, I think I would travel with them for sure. There's a company that sets up summer camps for American kids, and so we would definitely spend a summer probably in Europe
Yeah, it should.
doing that. But I think if I wasn't doing the travel piece of it, I would probably go back to school. I've been in and out of this obsession of nutrition and holistic wellness. So I would probably go back and study.
Nice. Very cool.
I love this. Well, Jared, this has been the most amazing conversation. So thank you so much for joining us, sharing your perspective. We had a lot of great insight. We had a lot of great laughs along the way. So thank you so much. Loved having you here.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
for having.
you. And thank you to everyone listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe and follow Market Makers. We'll be back soon with more conversations with the leaders and operators shaping what comes next in real estate. Thank you.